When a hero is defeated, it is a rare thing, which makes it much more devastating to watch it happen. Welcome back, nerds. I'm Adam Andrews, and this is part 2 of the top 10 devastating superhero defeats. Kicking off the list at number 10 is Civil War. While there was a clear winner in terms of who won the conflict in Marvel Comics' Civil War event, that being Tony Stark, in the grand scheme of things, there really wasn't any winner. The Civil War split the entire superhuman community down the middle. Heroes allied with villains, friends turned on friends, people were manipulated into joining a side, and a few of those people passed away, all for an act that would require the registration and regulation of superhuman individuals, following a completely avoidable superhuman-caused catastrophe. And while you had Tony Stark coming out on top, he made a lot of enemies along the way, including Spider-Man, and I don't think he ever intended for the death of Steve Rogers. Also, after he came out on top, he was put in charge of S.H.I.E.L.D. and did a spectacularly bad job, leading to Norman Osborn of all people to take over, ushering in a whole lot more of bad. I don't think really anyone came away from Civil War feeling particularly great. Number 9, The Reigning. After the passing of Odin at the hands of Surtur during Dan Jurgens' Thor run from 1998 to 2004, Thor became the new All-Father of Asgard, and he made some pretty interesting choices during this time. One of the biggest decisions he made was moving Asgard to the skies above New York to inspire mortals with its grandeur and to force the world to be better. This triggers a conflict with the governments of Earth, which ultimately ends with the Asgardians conquering the planet and completely wiping out most of the superheroes. The story now shifts 200 years, where Thor now rules over this dystopian future and is no longer worthy of Mjolnir after killing his human counterpart Jake Olsen, symbolically cutting his ties with humanity. There is no more famine or disease, no borders or religion, there's no need to work, and Asgard's magic provides infinite clean energy for the whole planet. But this comes at the cost of making humans become inferior, with a few also planning to rise up against the Asgardians in order to regain their freedom. Thor marries Amora the Enchantress, and they have a son called Magni. Now Magni ends up supporting the humans and the rebellion after seeing how badly the Asgardians are actually treating them. He challenges his father to lift up Mjolnir, proving that he is no longer worthy and leading Thor to question his own actions. After seeing the error of his ways, Thor uses the Odin Force to go back in time, erasing that whole timeline and making sure the Asgardians never take over Earth. For a character as unstoppable as Thor, his defeat here came in a much more poetic way, and it made for a great story. If you're enjoying this part 2, make sure you get yourself over to our channel to check out part 1, and maybe, if you want to, subscribe while you're at it. Always helps us out here at Top 10 Nerd. Coming in at number 8 is Avengers Infinity War. In the MCU, most of the movies follow a simple idea of a hero facing and eventually defeating a villain, coming out triumphant by the end of the film, completing an arc. Even if the villain survives to continue into another film in the cinematic universe, they are still usually defeated by the hero at the end of their debut movie. Well, when we were given the Avengers Infinity War, it marked the first time in the MCU when the heroes, and furthermore, all the heroes together, officially lost by the end of the movie. Despite their best efforts to stop Thanos from acquiring all the Infinity Stones to complete his mission, he still managed to put them all into his big golden gauntlet and snap out half of the life in the universe. He left the heroes in shock of what even just happened as they watched their friends turn to dust. And when we meet them all again in the next film, Avengers Endgame, they've all been left reeling and trying to move forward from such a massive defeat, which led to one of their greatest victories. Number 7, Shazam in Injustice. In the Injustice game, Superman is the tyrant ruler of the Earth. Most of the other heroes have either joined him or joined Batman as part of an effort to thwart Superman and bring him down. One of the heroes who remained on Superman's side was actually Billy Batson, Shazam. This is surprising to pretty much everyone, but seeing that Billy Batson is only a kid, more susceptible to some manipulation, it starts to make more sense. It also makes it very brutal when Superman takes down Shazam for turning on Superman and mentioning the now dead Lois Lane. Superman takes down Billy frighteningly quick, using his frost breath to freeze Shazam's mouth shut, stopping him from using his signature phrase, and then melting his brain through his eyes with his heat vision. Now I don't know if this would actually work in any other continuity, I don't see why not, but Shazam has proven himself more than capable to take on Superman. Either way, it made me immediately hate this version of Superman, and it made me pretty darn sad at the same time. Number 6, Ultimate Spider-Man. Ultimate Spider-Man is one of the most beloved Spider-Man runs ever, which made the death of Spider-Man such a hard comic to read. Norman Osborn, the Green Goblin, escapes the Triskelon along with Dr. Octopus, Sandman, Kraven the Hunter, Electro, and Vulture, and hides in an apartment building near Central Park. With S.H.I.E.L.D. occupied by an explosion, Osborn tells the 6 sinister villains that it's the perfect time to do God's work and finally take out Spider-Man. Now Otto objects to this plan, but Norman overpowers Otto and deals a fatal blow to him. Learning this, Peter heads to where the battle took place to find Otto's body. He goes off to investigate where Norman was off said to be, but when he leaves, he ends up spotting Captain America standing over a beaten Nick Fury and sees the Punisher aiming a rifle at Cap. That's all part of a separate issue, but he immediately dives towards Cap and pushes him out of the way, taking the bullet on himself. Now while it wasn't fatal, in his weakened state he had a much harder time facing off against Green Goblin and his collected villains. Peter puts up one hell of a heroic fight with the help of Aunt May, the Human Torch, and Mary Jane, taking out pretty much everyone until he faces this super amped up version of Green Goblin. Fighting on his last legs, he's helped out by Mary Jane, who shares one last kiss with Peter before he defeats the Goblin and then suffers his final blow from an explosion. He then passes away in the arms of Mary Jane in a pretty iconic panel, and now I want to cry. So that's great. Number 5, Countdown to Infinite Crisis. I think we can all agree that it's incredibly rare to see a mainline superhero taken out of the picture. And if it does happen, it's usually in a huge blaze of glory like Spider-Man up there, or an incredibly tragic moment, or after a long momentous battle with cancer in the case of Marvel's Mar-Vell. So when Ted Kord, Blue Beetle, was erased from existence thanks to a bullet from a barrel at the hands of Maxwell Lord in the Countdown to Infinite Crisis, it was pretty bad. After following Ted the whole book as he struggles for anyone in the Justice League to take him seriously, while he's correctly on the trail of Maxwell Lord and learning of all his misuse of both the Justice League's files, Batman's Brother's Eye satellite, and the OMAX, you'd expect Kord to come out surviving, having a cathartic moment where he finally gets the League's respect or to make a dent in Lord's plans, but instead, he gets snuffed out like a tea light candle that hadn't even begun to make the wax melt. It's abrupt, it's brutal, and it made me legitimately sad to read it. Number 4, House of M. Look, there is getting completely clobbered, losing life or loved ones, going down the path of a tyrant, and turning on one another, and that all happens in House of M. The kicking off point for this story was a defeat all of its own, the heroes being completely helpless as the Scarlet Witch completely rewrote reality. Now while she gave everyone pretty much exactly what they all wanted and made mutants the dominant race on the Earth, she robbed the world of their free will and had them all living a complete lie. And when that lie was uncovered, the Scarlet Witch lost more than she already had. Blaming that loss on her inclusion as a mutant, she spoke the 3 little words of no more mutants, and all at once, the mutant species suffered one of its most devastating defeats. All at once, 986,618 mutants were depowered, leaving some in situations that saw them lose their lives, thanks to the decimation. It was first estimated that 91.4% of the world's mutant population lost their powers overnight, leaving less than 200 mutants in the world. The Xavier Institute's mutant students count went down from 182 to just 27. This left mutants on the brink of complete extinction. Number 3, Hush. Batman has a bit of a habit for being infallible, or at least I think that's what he likes to tell himself. So when someone gets the better of him, it hurts. But when that someone is a childhood best friend, I can imagine it hurts quite a bit more. In the 2003 story Batman Hush, Bruce Wayne's childhood friend, Dr. Tommy Elliot, comes back to Gotham, but unbeknownst to Bruce, Tommy has a plan in place. Working with the Riddler and a large array of Batman's rogues gallery, including Killer Croc, Clayface, Harley Quinn, Poison Ivy, and even the Joker, Tommy orchestrates a huge plan manipulating events and those closest to Bruce Wayne to leave Batman distracted, outsmarted, paranoid, and ultimately subdued. He uses intimate details of Bruce's life against him in an attempt to take down Batman and have him unmasked at Arkham Asylum, all in some weird attempt for revenge against Bruce's father and a promise made by baby Bruce. Now if it wasn't for the intervention of Jim Gordon and a reformed Two-Face, Batman would have completely lost, being broken down over the course of the story by his old friend. Number 2, Pain of the Gods. If we are talking devastating defeats, comics, a really good place to look would be issues 101 to 106 of JLA from 2004, a storyline titled Pain of the Gods that details each member of the Justice League's biggest failures. It is absolutely depressing, but on the bright side, perfect for this list. It kicks off with Superman, who arrives to save people trapped in a burning building. Now, an unnamed hero shows up to lend a hand while Superman saves those inside, and he brings them to safety until an explosion goes off, burning the other superhero to a crisp. The second issue follows Flash as he fails to save two younger people from a burning building, finding them when it was too late and the smoke inhalation had got them. He then goes around the city installing fire detectors in every single house, getting mad at a family who didn't find time to go install a new battery. In issue 3, we see John Stewart, Green Lantern, trapped between two separate domestics. He rushes to one and prevents it, but when he makes it to the other, it was arguably worse and resulted in a loss of life. The next issue follows Martian Manhunter, but this time it's more of his failings to understand the emotion that we experience as humans, and his alienation from that, and the pain of losing his entire species. It's really interesting, honestly, but moving on to issue 105, this one follows Wonder Woman, and for the Amazon, it was an extremely close near-death experience at the hands of a new supervillain that drove her down a path of needing some emotional support. Now, each issue ends with the team coming together for each other as a support system, and it's actually really sweet. And it all wraps up in the final issue with a story that was happening alongside everything else I talked about, but I'll leave that for you to read for yourself because it's really cool and I think you'll like it. And finally, in at number 1, it's Knightfall. There are many deranged and off-the-wall villains in Batman's rogues gallery, and while the Dark Knight has suffered losses and defeats at the hands of a few, none of those defeats are as infamous as the one he suffered at the hands of Bane. By issue 11 of the Broken Bat part of the arc, Bane had managed to find out that Bruce Wayne was indeed Batman. Bane surprised Bruce at his home, pumped himself with venom, and laid a brutal beatdown on the Dark Knight in his own home. The fight continued on into the Batcave, and being completely taken by surprise, Batman is on his last legs when the venom-fueled tank of a man lifted Batman over his head and dropped him spine first onto his massive back-breaking knee. This brutal move, captured in one of the most iconic panels ever, put the Batman completely out of commission, requiring him to choose another to fill his role as the protector of Gotham until he could make his final triumphant return. And that is the end, my friends. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Adam Andrews, this is Top 10 Nerd, and I'll catch you all on the flippity flop. Peace out, nerds.